Hi there and welcome back to Northlight Photographic Workshops. This is just going to be another short addendum video and part of the three-part addendums that go along with my gum over platinum video. In this one we're going to be mixing up our gum and our pigment. Now again, I've taken this video and I've split these parts of it up into three addendums because it's a little bit more involved, and I'd rather just kind of on the regular video, just kind of run through beginning to end without having to explain each individual part. So I've split those off into addendums so that you can see more in depth those different parts of the process. And we've done so far one on sizing the paper, which you can see a link to up here. In fact, you can see the link to all of them up here right now. I've saved them as a playlist. And anyway, the sizing, and then also one on mixing up your ammonium dichromate. Now, the other thing that you're going to need to mix your ammonium dichromate with in doing the gum bichromate process is gum arabic and some sort of a pigment mixed in. Now, I've got several pigments here that I'm going to be using. Actually, I'm only going to be using one to show you how I mix them up. You can just take it on your own from there. Now, the process is that you have to mix, the ammonium dichromate with your pigment and gum mixture. Now, you mix them 50-50, 1-to-1, and then you mix enough that you can pour out onto an acrylic sheet, and then use rollers, which you can see in the regular video on the gum over process. I use the roller to pick that up and then roll it onto the print. Now, in order to mix up the pigment ahead of time, I like to have some sort of a set formula that I use. Now, in doing this gum over process, we're working with transparent pigments as much as possible. I mean, the pigments come in many, or watercolor pigments, this is what we're using, come in different types. And there's transparents, there's opaques, and opaques are designed not to be able to see through. But for us, we want to be able to see through that pigment to be able to see the palladium coating underneath. So we're most often interested in using transparent pigments. Now, I like to use better pigments. These are Daniel Smith pigments. I like to use Utrecht's, Schmincke's. Basically, you get what you pay for when you're using pigments. I mean, I don't advise anybody to try to cut corners and buy the cheaper watercolor pigments that you can get at your local stores. Definitely, if you can't get Daniel Smith or Utrecht locally, you can look below and I'll have links down there to Jerry's Artarama or Daniel Smith directly that you can order these pigments from. Now, you're going to need the pigments, of course. You're going to need some gum arabic. Now, I get my gum arabic from Bostick and Sullivan, like I get a lot of my other alternative process supplies, and there'll be a link down below to that as well. The gum arabic, you can get it at other places, Photographer's Formulary. You can look on Amazon for a lot of this chemistry now. So I'll have a link below to this one in particular. Now, another thing, another thing that you're going to want to need are these little squeeze bottles or little bottles of some sort to mix your pigment and gum in. Now, once you've mixed your pigment and gum, the pigment can settle out and you can just shake it up again, but it's good for a good long time in there. Now, and the same with the dichromate. Until they're mixed together, the dichromate doesn't become light sensitive, and so it's good indefinitely as well, as long as you keep those bottles sealed. So I like to have an empty one of these little bottles. These are about 50 milliliters, and I like to mix my pigment at about a 10% solution. Now, again, I'm mixing transparent pigments, and I'm mixing them a little bit less dilution in them because I don't want to throw a lot of color in on every layer. Basically, in a gum over platinum, you're using the colors and the pigment to add some tonality to it and to give another thin layer of depth and that kind of thing. I'm not looking to make it into a color photograph. Now, if you're using this video to mix up your pigments for regular gum bichromate process, where you're going to be doing tricolor gums or four-color gums, you're going to want to mix a higher ratio, and I can't advise to that at this point. Basically, I'm going for a 10% solution. So what that means is each one of these tubes is about 15 milliliters, and they weigh about, each tube weighs, I believe, let me see here, I'll tell you right off the bat, I think it's about 25 grams for each tube. Yeah, 25 grams for each tube. And so what I like to do is to split it up into 5-gram allotments, into fives, because what I do is I mix it up to 50 milliliters of gum, and mixing in 5 grams into 50 milliliters gives me a 10% solution. So, and that way I have a good base to start at. Now you, of course, might have something else. This is a very forgiving process, and a very process with a wide latitude. So there's a lot of different formulas that you can work with, and eventually you'll settle into what you like to do. But for me, I like to use a 10% solution. And in doing that, I'm going to want to weigh out 5 grams of pigment. So another thing I use is a small cheese knife or a butter knife that I can put onto my scale, and I can set the tare on, and that way I can squeeze my pigment out on top of that, weigh out my 5 grams, and use that to mix into something else. Another good thing that I like to have is a palette knife to help me mix up the pigment as well. The problem being is that the pigment, although it's water soluble, it takes a little bit to get it all mixed up in there, and basically I like to shake it up, but if I'm doing that, very often it's really hard to break it all up. So what I like to do is I like to mix it beforehand, before I mix it. I mix it with a small amount of gum arabic before I mix it in with the final amount, so that I have it all pretty much gone into solution by that time. So, and then I have my bottle here. So now what I like to do is I use another small bottle here, or another small vessel that's got a cap on it. Now these you can get from Lobby Hobby and other paint stores. They're for mixing up different paints and different pigments and things. Just what we're using them for. Now what I like to do is I like to open that up, and I put a little bit of gum in there, just because I like to have a little bit of a base to mix my pigment into. So I'll close that up and I'll put it off to the side here. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to mix up a French ochre. Now I like in my highlights and in the lighter areas of my prints to add this tone to it, and then I tend to make another layer exposure very often with a cooler tone, maybe a blue or something that I put into the shadows. So for the highlights I like to use the ochre, and it's a really good pigment to mix up. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to mix up I'm going to measure out 5 grams onto my cheese knife here. Let me get it set, get the tare set, and okay. So now you can see it's just a paste, and I'm going to measure that out onto here, and you can start seeing the weight show up on it. And I am right there, right at about, let's see, right there, I'm 5 grams. So I'm going to take that off of here. Well, before I take that off, I'm going to seal up my pigment so that I don't make even more of a mess than I'm going to make here. And set that off to the side. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little jar that I've put some gum into, and I'm going to take the pigment, and just like peanut butter, I'm going to spread it off on there on the side. And basically get as much of it off there as I can. Okay? Now I'm going to take my palette knife and I'm going to push it down inside of the gum here. You can probably see this here on camera now. Now it's very pasty, as you can see, and it sticks to the sides. So you just like to try to keep scraping it off the sides and getting it down into the gum to start getting it to go into solution. Now you can see I scrape off the side again like peanut butter, and there's still quite a lot of pasty pigment in there, but it's starting to dissolve really nicely. Now another thing that I can do is to add a little bit more gum to it, because I know eventually I'm going to be using 50 milliliters. And right now I've only got about 15. So I'll put the lid back on there. We'll get back here and we'll stir it up a little bit more. Okay, then I'll take my palette knife, clean that off, and now I like to go to a stirring rod. This is just a glass stirring rod. I like to use glass in a lot of the different mixing that I do. And now I can just stir that up. And I can make sure that most of that is going into solution now. So as you can see now, I've got a really nice consistency. It's like a thin milkshake now. All right. So now what I'll do is, again, I'll put this off to the side and I'll take my bottle here and I'm going to pour that first mixture in there. And as you can see, I've only got about 10 milliliters in there so far, and I've still left a lot of paste inside of my, my little jar here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour a little bit more pigment in there. Or I'm sorry, pigment. I'm going to pour a little bit more gum in there. And once again, now I'm just going to go straight to my, my stirring rod. And I'm just going to mix up as much as I can of the remaining pigment that's in there. Now you're never really going to get all of it, but you know, I know that I've got it into solution now, and that I'm not going to be getting any globs out when I'm mixing it up with my ammonium dichromate. Okay, so there we go. Now I'll pour that back into my plastic bottle here. Let it drain as much as I can. As you can see now, I've got a lot of the pigment out of there. And I'm going to set that off to the side here. And now I'm going to put the lid on for my little squeeze bottle, and I'm going to make sure the little cap is on. And then I'm just going to shake it up. And I give it a real good shake to get it all mixed up real nicely. But you can see now I've got a real nice mixture here, real nice, nice full pigmented mixture here of gum and pigment. And now I can use this further in the process. So what I do is I get it mixed up nicely like that, and then what I will do, of course, is I will take the lid off, and I'll take the gum, and I'll top it back off to a full 50 milliliters. Oops, wrong lid. There we go. And there we go. Now you can see that I've got a nice mixture mixed up here. And it's kind of a milky substance now, gum. It's got a bit of an organic smell to it. And it's ready to go. Now what I'm going to be doing with this after you get back to the regular section of the video is we're going to be mixing this 50-50 with the ammonium dichromate that we've mixed. And in our case, it's going to be a 30% solution. And once we've mixed those two together, they're both light sensitive, and we can coat the paper once again with that, dry it out, and then register the negative again with it, put it into the contact frame, and print it out again. So anyway, we'll get to that later in the video. You can get back to that video up here now. And I thank you for watching this. I hope you got something out of it. And thanks very much. Have fun printing. Take care. Bye-bye.